Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who left me out there like a sitting duck.
Tim Longo.
Yeah,
I sure did.
You sure? Yeah, that's you.
In more ways than one.
All over the place, just leaving me like a sitting duck. I don't remember what mission that happened in, but there's always cutscenes in between the. It was at the end of mission, I believe 3, where you're going to do something, and Taurus is like,
"Oh, that was 2. I played that one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, where he leaves you to. He's like, his radio's not working. Was that?
Yeah, he fakes it. He's like, "Oh."
Yeah, it's really funny because I was like, man, that audio is not good because that doesn't sound like a radio squelch at all. That sounds like the actor just going, and then of course that was part of the.
That's what it was. Yeah, very, very funny. That's also, I think, the mission where he tells you a poem.
I think the poem thing is a button. I know it's a button. It's a button you could just press because I did not get a poem. But you might have fat fingered the button because if you use the C key in the default bindings, I guess we'll just get into the bindings right away first. For me it was bound to the C key. It just said poem in the button interface.
Yeah, so I definitely would have hit C accidentally. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you didn't remap C, then and why would you? There's no crouch. You end up with this. You get a poem. I'm still so. By the way, we're talking about playing Interstate 76. Tim has had some technical difficulties and is traveling this week, so he doesn't have a lot of time to resolve them. So you'll be on the road, I guess, in a different way this week. Just a little warning: never get out of the car.
That's what I've been told.
But the button configuration for this game is crazy. We alluded to a bit last week. It's like 2 full columns. You said, like, I have every finger on the keyboard. I'm not using the mouse. And I was like, yep. And I looked at my, and I might still honestly hook up the joystick and try to remap it that way because I think it would be better, even though a controller is more comfortable to use. I think it actually...
The flight stick, you mean?
The flight stick, yeah.
The
joystick.
Which, like we talked about, most people who would have bought this game
would have had
it. Would have probably had one because of MechWarrior and Flight Sim games.
Right, yeah, your Falcon 3s and your, or Falcon...
Even X-Wing, TIE Fighter. And
yeah, that's true, yeah.
Well, and MechWarrior was known for it. MechWarrior was like, you need all the buttons on the flight stick, even pedals. If you had them.
Yeah, what's really wild about this is that there's some of the things that it does. I'm just like, I can't, like the way it supports the controller. The mappings don't make a lot of sense. So, for example, there is a gear selector, which, by the way, they're driving automatics. Come on, that's not how these guys would roll. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
but given that they are, there's one for like selecting the gear, so you can actually shift into reverse. And for me, I mapped moving left and right on the gear selector because it's marked parking all the way on the left, then reverse, neutral, drive 2-1, left to right. So I was like, okay, I'll move left on that with the left D-pad and right on that with the right D-pad. And I have actually dropped into second or first going up a hill once because I was like, wow, this is really chugging. And I dropped it down and it actually helped. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But the issue is that if you go into reverse, you still push forward on the stick, which is just mind-breaking. It just like...
It's like tank controls almost.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense. Like you're pushing your foot to the floor, right? And it's like, how much do you push your foot to the floor? And if you just leave the stick, it's kind of like a consistent sort of middle pressure on the thing of your foot on the floor. It's a very sort of strange way to look at the world of like, well, this is the axis of the mechanical thing that I'm doing. I push this way to do that, and you're instead of mapping onto how will the car move, which is a total like simulation view of the world. It's like, how do I move my body to do the thing, not how does the thing move as a result. Remember
Steel Battalion.
Oh, I mean, I never touched Steel Battalion.
I played it, not
controller.
Yeah, I didn't play it all the way through, but I played it at a friend's house. But yeah,
Wow.
literally, it was a friend's house because that wasn't. Anyway, look it up. We won't hit. It's a whole unique, different topic.
It's a whole
but
thing. There are buttons
that
just exist to turn on your mech, right? And things like that.
Well, it's a completely custom controller for the game.
Yeah. I mean, it was that age. That one came out right before like your Guitar Hero. So custom controllers were kind of all the rage. But that was a different time, a happier time where you could play a guitar instead of using 600 buttons on your keyboard. I know keyboards only have 101, but it feels like you need 6 keyboards to play games like this.
How did they I mean, because we're talking a lot. I mean, it's an accidental topic for this game, but it's ending up being a topic for compatibility.
Yeah,
future compatibility for this game, and not to know, not the game's fault in a way. It's just sort of like, what do you how much do you support games like this that have nobody really to support them? On the controller thing, who would have done that? Like, how does that work?
Microsoft. So this was right at the time that DirectX came around. And DirectX was curiously named because it was really in DirectX. Like it provided a layer.
That's not good branding.
Yeah, well, that's classic Microsoft. They provided this layer of like stuff of like, well, this is it's called an abstraction layer, where it's like, here is a set of things that your hardware needs to implement, or your drivers need to implement more accurately, so that we can use it in an abstract way. And in particular, it meant, well, I can ask, how many buttons does your controller have? By asking the driver in direct inputs case. So the way that this is compatible, and this is a direct, I think this thing has a DirectX. No, I don't think it has a full DirectX like Direct 3D driver, but it has I think it uses direct input. And it basically is asking like, well, what buttons do you have? And it has, I mean, I have exactly the right number of buttons to choose from in my interface. Then I curiously have like the other weird axes are like the right trigger R2, which is normally what we'd call it, is called the throttle, because they're thinking, well, it must be a joystick if it has all these buttons, right? So they're guessing at what some of the buttons mean in their interpretation. So because I don't think the spec requires you to name what the buttons are, like you don't have to say, it's certainly back in 1997, you wouldn't have been asking the driver, what do I call this button? And I'm not sure that that's even true today. I haven't written to that level in a while, but it was like this abstraction layer of like, describe to me your controller,
Wow.
How many inputs do you have? Like it had a number of things it did. Like you can enumerate your devices, and then you can ask each device, like, what are you? So like you can get a keyboard or mouse. Those are pretty easy to identify, and those are like locked in. And then, oh, you're a controller, which it assumed was a joystick back then. And probably all the controllers were joysticks, more or less, in 1997, near enough. So that, and then DirectX basically just asked the hardware, direct input in this case, hey, what do you have? And this was true of, and it might have been a forerunner of DirectX, like WinG or something like that. I think those things also had sort of a similar mechanism. They weren't quite as advanced, but so basically they can identify, well, how many buttons and axes does this thing you've plugged in have? And I will expose all of those things in the interface for configuring the controller in this case. So that's how it worked. That's
wow.
More or less still how it works. The support has never been great for some things, but that is how it works.
So it was essentially a system level, or
OS level,
yeah, OS level thing that just kind of came not kind of for free, but sort of.
Yeah, I mean, you still had to implement it on your own and determine what you were going to call those things, and but it's still the underlying, sort of technology.
But in this case, it probably was because of flight sticks existing, where they wanted their flight stick to generally work okay-ish, out of the box without somebody having to go in. Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. But anyway, continue on the. We should continue on the
Right. So
mapping stuff.
yeah, one of the things that's on the mapping. So you've got the poem, but there's also like looking around the cockpit of the car, let's say, um, and that is on the gray directional buttons, which Tim was asking me pre-show, like, what does that mean? And I was like, well, there used to be a separate numpad, and I think they were a different color originally, like a lighter gray.
Yeah.
From the regular keys
On
on the
my
left.
AT&T 6300,
Yeah, exactly.
which was my first my first real PC, they were a different color. They weren't gray though. I think they were brown
Yeah,
because it
so it
was a
depended.
competitor.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the IBM PCs, and I had one of those for a long time. Like I didn't want to give it up, even though I no longer had computers that I could even connect them to because they had a funky port. It was an IBM PC port, and those got dropped. I think around the time of my gateway computer. I mean, I think that's the last one I had that had one. And then my LucasArts ones had them too. But those were like prized keyboards because they were mechanical and everything was starting to switch. So like, they were super loud and clack 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 clack, and like the shift had moved to I don't know what you'd call them, but these sort of softer keyboards that are not. I don't actually know what the
Now
mechanism is.
mechanical's back.
And now mechanical's back, but it's like a niche, kind of a niche thing. It's like it doesn't come with you buy a PC, you don't get a mechanical keyboard in it unless you've like opted in and paid another $100 or something like that. But my freaky keyboard is the same way. My split, prevent carpal tunnel keyboard is mechanical. So with
Well, the flight sticks. Assuming you don't have a flight stick, the default mapping, has these gray keys, but also, and I'm kind of I could get my flight stick out, I guess, but I'm kind of intentionally wanting to play only on the keyboard just for the, I don't know, setting it in its time.
yeah.
But imagine you basically have claw hands for both your hands on
Yep.
both sides of the keyboard, and that's kind of how I'm playing. And I'm, and I've remapped I was originally playing on a laptop. I might actually switch, so I don't have a number pad, but on this computer I do. But I was switched at least to the arrow keys, which are on your right hand. So I did kind of still have the two hand thing going. But to the poem example, it's like, I'm just like hitting whatever key I can get to, the
Yeah.
fastest, because there's just I'm using WASD now. I remapped it to WASD on the left hand, and that's where I'm steering, because that felt most natural to me due to FPSs and stuff. And for playing WoW or MMOs, you're used to that kind of stuff. There's a lot of hotkey and key mappings on your left hand, and you're mousing on the other. But to have both hands on the keyboard is a very nostalgic and not something I've done in obviously many, many years. So it's definitely mind bending because I had mapped to the arrow keys, of course, mapped to the head look stuff. And as an aside, on some of the compatibility websites, as they try to help you, which I still have not succeeded at, having trespasser flashbacks, where they try to help you get the game running correctly, they have some subtopics of things like get the head tracking working with this thing and get the audio working. So this was also the time when, Sims were starting to do things, and I mentioned pedals earlier, but if you were really hardcore into Sims, this was the early days, which still happens, especially for driving games like Forza these days, where you have pedals. You could have a throttle on your left hand and then the flight stick in your right hand. So you wouldn't even need the keyboard if you got all these devices, these peripherals. And people, some of the people who still play this game and are trying to make it work, get that stuff going. But doing it with your hands, like looking out, you can even look behind you with the keyboard or with the keys. It's hard to do both.
I think TIE Fighter did that with the numpad, is my recollection.
Yeah, right.
The same way this does. Yeah. So it's kind of a standard.
A standard, yeah. If you have, yeah, that's because they know everyone has a keyboard, so they start there.
Yeah.
But it's driving. I don't know, something about flying versus driving, like driving and then also looking with your head with both hands on the keyboard. That's a next level, next level mind bend.
Yeah. It is weird, and again, it's strange because I guess it's consistent, right? It's because you're modeling how the human body sits in this thing. So I guess it's consistent that, the head tracking or whatever is what it is, right? I mean, it's because it's like, oh, what you're doing is controlling the character's head, right? The human character inside the car,
Yeah, right.
or the human character inside the TIE fighter, or, whatever. But it's just a flavor of thing I haven't done, like you said, in years, and when we played TIE Fighter, a lot of that stuff I don't do, like, and because you can't reverse in a TIE Fighter, I didn't occur to me at the time, like, oh, I'm simulating the person, not the ship, because those are pretty unified when it comes to TIE Fighter. But in a car where you can literally go into reverse, it is a different thing, and it made me
Right.
recognize that was what was happening. It's like, oh, this axis is controlling how much the foot is down, which is just it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So
the concept of acceleration, the concept of gears, the concept of physics turning a car versus a spaceship or even a plane. I don't know. It's just when you're flying, it's sort of like you're gonna be flying forward.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with a car,
these things don't go backwards.
Yeah, exactly. With a car, even if you're not going in reverse, you can turn very quickly, and then your world spatial orientation is quickly shifted because you're doing a fishtail, and you're like, and now you're like, okay, where's that car I was trying to track? Which I'm sure we'll get into as far as like trying to shoot at things that you can't, where your car is your crosshairs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the front
Which
of the car,
is
because everything's hard mounted.
You can't. Yeah, you can't aim separately. Well, at least I don't have a weapon where you can do that. I don't know if that's something. There is a zoom in weapon view where you look down the barrel of the weapon.
Right. Yeah,
is handy sometimes, but.
I have not had occasion to use that, and I hope I never do. I did like getting 50 caliber guns because it makes everything a lot easier. You don't have to
those
hit
are
things as
great.
much. But I guess we can move on then to the car sort of repair and outfitting now that I've done it. It's been interesting because at first I didn't recognize that green was like a different, like green was also bad. It's like green means good, right?
Right.
It's like nothing is good, and then green is pretty good, and then
you were outfitting with a bunch of green stuff.
yeah, I had some green stuff on the car, and I didn't recognize. I just was like, oh, that's new, or whatever. It's new and it's in good condition. I should put it on my car instead of getting it repaired. But Tim alluded to last time that there's sort of a post mission, like what's left on the field that you can grab.
Very Mad Max.
It is very Mad Max, and also very Mech Warrior, of like, here's this, you blew up all these mechs, and now here's all the guns that you were in different condition, and it's basically your upgrade path, as you mentioned last time.
Right.
And like, it was very clear, and I think what happened was the first time I either had things that were undamaged or they were badly damaged. I had very little that was kind of in between. I didn't have anything that was green, and so green didn't really.
It's not. Yeah, I was confused too, for sure.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, it's either fine, or it's yellow or orange or red, or yellow or red, or whatever it is. And then the next time it was like there were some new things and they were green. I thought they were green because they were new to me, like 14-inch wheels instead of 13-inch wheels, or I guess radius wheels.
It's wild how, I know it's, again, a holdover from Mech Warrior type games, but it's wild that even early on where I am, there's the variety is there, and having to think through. I'm sure the manual gives you more information, but having to think through the pros and cons of things.
Yeah. So far, I haven't found anything that was noticeably heavier, though I did consider um, taking off things because in the second mission. So one of the things that happened in this game that I didn't expect, but I should have, it being a car game, is that there is basically racing, and there's something that's more explicitly a race later on in mission. I think 4, possibly 5. I think 5 maybe. Where it's literally a race on a racetrack, and I failed it several times, and I was like, maybe I should just go into the
Hmm.
pre-mission repair and just take off like these guns and this, whatever, just to lower my weight so that I will accelerate faster, because I will have less weight to move. And I ended up not doing it because, of course, after you beat them, then everybody turns on you and you have to kill them anyway. So you don't want to be without guns, as it turns out.
Hmm.
So so far I have not actually had much opportunity to deal with the weight, but I was looking at that like, oh no, am I going to have to make hard choices about what I put on my car because I have a weight allowance, right? I can't go heavier than a certain thing. So far I have not had to do that, but it feels like it's a thing that's coming.
Yeah. I wonder how much it does end up. I mean, again, I haven't gotten that far, unfortunately, but wonder how how much it impacts the driving model when you start really messing with that stuff in an extreme manner. Um, did you have you so you haven't done it yet? You haven't noticed if the
All I've done
car
is add
handles
stuff and
differently?
it just stays at 0 so far. Like I haven't gone overweight, so anything I've wanted to add
Hmm.
has been the same. So I added nitrous, which you can imagine is like no different because it's basically a small amount of liquid in the cockpit and a button, right? So it's not like complicated. It's, I mean, I guess you're adding a tank, right, of of nitrous oxide. So
Yeah.
that's the thing I added. No, I didn't change that out because they were damaged. I changed out the 30 caliber guns for 50 caliber guns. And you would think actually the 50 caliber guns would be heavier because the ammo would be heavier. Uh, and there's the same amount of ammo, but they're not. It just does more damage. So I was like, well, that's good. I dodged a bullet there, as it were. Um, and that's been it. Yeah, there's been no like putting additional, I don't know, shielding on the front or something like that because you're going to be going into some, attacking some compound or something. You want to have
Yeah.
additional, stuff on the front of you because they've got, I don't know, maybe they have turrets. Like who knows what's going to happen in this game, as far as stuff like that goes.
Yeah, I looked up. I mean, not to spoil things, but I looked up at least the number of missions. I
Yeah,
don't know if you looked
17.
at
I said.
17. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what the arc is and how complicated things do or don't get. And then there's something called instant action missions, which I don't know if those are multiplayer or what those are. But now I'm wondering, like, is your car and your uh, pieces of cars, are they persistent and can you kind of grind for better stuff? I wonder. You know what I mean? Because there is a save state, but
Yeah, but I don't think there's a well. There is a save state. I think that those two things are different, and I think that um, sort of the grind. You probably would like grind the fight against the PC. I think the melee is both instant action play against some number of PCs, but also online play because it does have an online component.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the multiplayer I think was a pretty beloved. If I don't think we could get it going, but that was also
People still do, as it turns out. So
yeah. Okay, maybe
if you go
so.
to get.interstate76.com, like they describe how they've set up their deal to play online,
Wow.
and
I,
they're still playing it 28 years later or whatever it
yeah,
is.
that's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
I mean,
Well,
I love that that's the case, but this is not a well preserved game, so it's a little tough to imagine.
yeah, it's probably a group of yeah, small community, dedicated community, maybe even friends or people who yeah. I mean, there was a few people on Discord who mentioned it, right?
Yeah,
And then some were like, "What is this?" And then
yeah.
some definitely it resonated with. Yeah, and I'm sure because I saw some of those how tos on getting head tracking stuff going that some of those folks are playing with multiple peripherals as well. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the thing with that's the other holdover. We talked about it last episode, but going back a little bit to the controls, people, because this was coming from the Mech Warrior family and that fan base was probably a lot of them were playing this game or wanted something new, and it was such a fresh and new take on it. But in Mech Warrior, kind of the whole concept of those mechs, right, is that your head was independent from your body.
Right.
So you could walk in one direction and turn and fire in the other direction. And so mapping that into this game in some way, here it's like shooting out the side of the window, I guess. But I haven't. That seems very difficult to use well.
Yeah, impossible. Actually, I mean, I can't even imagine. I don't have a button for it currently, so I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there. I'm trying to play on the controller because it's comfortable for me, largely because of the keyboard, and not wanting to flip between keyboards. It's such a pain. The way my basement is set up. But on the controller, I've mapped I don't have the triggers mapped because they don't really make sense to map as anything. I was like, well, what, like they don't, I can't map, you have to map a button to certain things and you can map axes to other things. So I was like, well, none of these things that I can map axes to, would it make sense for me to put on the trigger? The only thing might be drive, but then I'm going to have that trigger pulled all the time, and that just seems not good to me. So I've decided not to do that. Pushing forward on the stick is way more comfortable than like pulling a trigger the whole time. So that was a thing I considered but didn't do. So I basically have two inputs I can't use. I have target what's in front of me and target nearest on R1 and L1 respectively, I believe. I have back and start as like notebook and map, because it seems like that's a thing you want to be able to do. Although you can't quit out of them without using the keyboard, you have to hit escape. It's so crazy, this game.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah, it's very hard to the things that you're like, oh well, it would make more sense to just hit this button again. And then A and B are like fire and next weapon, and I don't remember what X and Y are right now, but they were things that made sense. And then I mentioned the left right on D-pad. I haven't done something with up down on the D-pad because nothing there. I was like, obviously this or obviously that, so I'll come back to it. And then I've got the right stick as well, which is unused, which is fine because if I had to shoot and do whatever's on the right stick, that's not going to be possible. So yeah, it's weird.
You could use the right stick for the head look then, maybe.
I could if it allows axes.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that are like a state change like that only allow buttons. So
yeah,
so I might
the mapping is weird because you start mapping and it brings up a list of all the keys on the keyboard.
Yeah,
and then you're scrolling through the keys.
To find the keys. Yeah,
yeah, it's very old school.
Yeah. So you don't even see the joystick buttons, or do you? On your laptop, you might not have because you didn't have a controller connected.
Right. No, I guess I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do because I have a controller connected. So that's that's direct input right there.
I feel like I saw the word axis, but it must not.
It's probably for the mouse.
Could be. Yeah. Yeah. They definitely have right. Yeah, definitely the mouse buttons were there, but I'm not using a mouse right now. I don't know if that's how that would even work or if that's a good idea, but
I wouldn't recommend it. Trying to mouse and
I don't even know what.
Finding the keys. It's a device. It's connected. So it comes up for me too as a possibility. Yeah. It's like, here's all the devices. I mean, and that's why it's there, is like because you could have a steering wheel and an accelerator brake thing and a throttle and like have 4 different devices or whatever.
Steering wheel. I didn't even think of that. Of course.
Yeah, right. And that's how all that is dealt with. Is like that's all just, and you could have buttons on that steering wheel and whatever. A lot of them did. So it's.
I bet this game's fun with the steering wheel.
I bet it's pretty good with the steering wheel. Actually, it's one thing I wouldn't mind having. A steering wheel and a pedal would be kind of a cool way to play it. Because it's comfortable to put your foot kind of halfway down, but it's not comfortable to, to put it. I mean, my brain would just do it for reverse, and it would feel comfortable doing reverse, and then with your left thumb pushing forward feels very
Yeah,
strange.
that's very weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not modern thinking as far as what your brain assumes.
Yeah. You know what else is not modern thinking is the mission design. How about that for a segue? So, in addition to the racing missions, which I should have expected and just didn't when I got to the second one and failed a bunch of times because I was trying to follow him, A, and B, because it took me a while to get comfortable with the left stick as my steering while also my accelerator. That was very kind of mentally
Sure.
tricky. It's not really well tuned for that, and they expect, as you would say, greater throw. I think because they expect it to actually be a flight stick. So like moving forward and turning enough was like, actually, I don't want to move forward at all. I just want a hard turn. It took a while just to kind of get used to that because that's not the way you play games often when you're controlling a third person character or something like that. So that was the thing. So I failed a number of times just because I was trying to keep behind him and and whatever. Then I've discovered finally, there's a shortcut. And if you take the shortcut, it's easy to beat him, which is this ramp. But for you, that ramp is no good.
Well, I'm still in the physics bug world, but the funny thing is, the first time I played that mission, I won the race against him somehow, just miraculously, because I can't make that jump through the physics bug. Like, I literally just like careen right into the ditch or into the valley. But if I get lucky, I land on my wheels, then I can quickly race out of the gully and get back on it. So I guess it's enough of a shortcut to where if you can do that, then I still was able to win. But I haven't been able to win since then. I lost my save, so which I probably could have saved off in retrospect. But anyway, but I haven't been able to replicate that because usually I land on upside down and blow up.
Yeah.
So it's really quite funny because he talks up the the jump. He's like, go straight at it, blah blah blah, and then just the car just literally beep, and then
no, that's not the jump I'm talking about. That one's everybody. You have to make that. You have to do that jump. There's a second jump in that racing section.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. Well, I think I went over two jumps, but maybe I thought it was the same jump.
No. There's a different jump that happens where like the road splits. There's one like that both of you go out over, and then there's another one where he goes off to the left, which is kind of a long way around, and you have a second jump, which is
got it. Yeah, I remember not being able to make both jumps. I just think I thought it was the same jump. We were going in a circle or something. Anyway,
I see. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, no. I mean, there's that kind of stuff is impossible with the bugged version. So
yeah. Yeah, and we talked a little bit last week about the physics issues, discussing it more with the folks in the Discord, because somebody was like, well, wouldn't it make it better if there less time or a higher frame rate? Wouldn't it be more accurate? And the problem is no, because small errors, like I sort of got there in the end last week of like, well, small errors actually compound much faster, the higher the frame rate is, and they're more likely because there's less time, and so you have a low number for time, it's not 0.3, for 30 frames a second, it's 0.001, say, so you lose a, 1 order of magnitude of precision there. And I've seen the most errors going up hills when I was in the bad physics mode. And that was, now you're at an angle. So you're, instead of being kind of on the flat where your push up from the ground is 1, basically. Now you also have a fractional value on the pushing up, on the wheels. So there you lose another order of magnitude. And now you've lost 2 orders of magnitude of precision when you can, or 2 decimal digits of precision when you only have 8 decimal digits of precision in a floating point, roughly speaking. So it's like you're just making worse and worse and worse the problems with the higher frame rate. And so you get basically rounding errors, and those errors get worse and worse over time because you're either way under or way over, and those add up very, very quickly. And what it looks like in your case is probably the wheels are juddering a ton, and you're probably not. I can't even imagine what it's doing to the driving, because now your wheels aren't touching the ground every other frame. So you're probably not getting as much acceleration as you normally would, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a whole mess.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you get you saw it somewhat in the training mission or
I
whatever.
did, yeah.
But yeah, you just get this sense that it's trying to constantly correct itself with any little bump or any little, change. So there's just a lot of jittering happening. So, I mean, I was able to finish those 2 missions, but yeah, until I get that working right, it's not going to be possible.
Yep. Well, we will try to target that for next time so that you can get through more of it. I got through nearly 6 missions. I got through 5. I've had to replay all of them, I think, except maybe the first one. Is the first one the one with the diner? I think I even had to replay that one actually a couple times.
The first one, yeah, the one. Well, you blow up the fireworks.
You
And
blow
then
up the fireworks and then you go
and then
save the diner.
wagon wheel. Yeah.
And I have failed that multiple ways. One, I accidentally blew up the diner myself. Because I switched to the missiles and I fired at a car in that direction, not realizing, that thing behind it is the diner. Missed the car, hit the diner.
Think about the children.
I know. Think about the children. We have children here.
He literally says that. The guy on the radio.
I think that was a snipe at in 1997. Could that have been a snipe at what's her name, Mrs. Gore, Tipper Gore? Think of the children.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah,
right, because that was her thing about explicit lyrics. On album covers. This feels
there's
like
there's a lot of little things in this.
Yeah, that are very specific.
Having fun with.
Yeah. So there was that, and then the other thing too is like I was looking at the characters, like the main character who's playing Groove Champion. His name is Everett Mann, and James. I think it's James White is or James. It might be White. I can't remember if it's James White who plays the Taurus, and then it's like Wilcott the third, Dwayne Wilcott the third type thing is is Skeeter, their mechanic. So I was looking at all those names. I thought it was very funny. And yeah, something fungi for the bad guy, Malocchio or whatever his name is. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so I shot out the diner one time. I don't think I was the only one who shot it, but I know I did shoot it. I went over. I was trying to get to the diner faster and went over an edge and landed on my roof. So I died that way. And this was and it's at the end of the mission. Like it's the last thing you have to do.
Yeah.
Which is what I was kind of getting at. Is like this is a very 90s game design, whereas you build to the end of the mission, but there's possibly multiple points where you could fail along the way, and the challenges are getting tougher through the mission.
There's no mid-mission saves.
And because there's no mid-mission saves, which means you're like, okay, I go to this point and fail. I figure out what to do with that, like with the race. Like, I went to the race, I got to that point and failed. Then I go to the next part and I fail again because whatever, I flipped the car, I did this, whatever happened. I didn't know, like I accidentally shot the diner. So I have to start over, and I have to redo the first part of the mission again and do this end part, which of course 4 times for the first mission. And I just was like looking at my life over the next few weeks, and like by the time we get to mission 17, it's going to take me 3 hours to play the mission, like because of the number of times I'm going to fail along the way,
right.
and redo things. It's already happened. It took me 45 minutes just to fail the first time at mission 6. So I was like, oh no, because
wow.
Well, what happened? Yeah. So in mission 6, Taurus has been he's got some money that you've gotten from Malachai's or Malocchio's operation, and he's taking it like to a safe place, and he is waylaid by Malocchio, and so you have to go out and rescue him. I don't know why Malocchio didn't just kill him. I guess he's effectively leaving him for dead because he does have a gunshot in his chest. So you drive out, and Skeeter's like, well, you should check at such and such a place. And on the map, this shows some places where you could look. And I could see like there's burning cars around there. So I'm like, well, he's not any of these burning cars. The rendering makes it so you can't actually see him from the road, but he's off the road a ways. And I'm like, and I didn't see the turnoff. So I drove right past the turnoff that you need to go to get him. The second part of the mission, after you've dealt with him and dealing with him, you've already shot 2 or 3 cars, I guess. And then I went up to this other road. I'm like, well, it must be up here. There's more important map over here. Let me go check that out and see if he's up there. And so I killed a bunch of other dudes up there, and then finally got down to another place, which is where the mission ultimately is going to end, and shot another bunch of dudes. So I like killed all these guys in car combat, and I'm still doing pretty well, though my car has been roughed up at this point and is moving more slowly, which will become important. And so I get all the way to there. I even found where the mission's going to end. You have to do this jump that has no bridge on the other side. You're just going to land in this canyon to get to where Skeeter is at the end of the mission, which is what you need to do. Is get to Skeeter. Whew. So
wow.
I did all that, and like I go in the directions that are left to me of roads that I haven't explored, and at a certain point he'll say, nah, this is the wrong way, or whatever. He'll say like, nah, this doesn't seem right. And then if you keep driving, he'll be like, this really doesn't seem right. So it's like, turn around, dummy. So I turn around and go back. I go all the way back over this hill, and again, like the car's not, I mean, nothing, maybe one thing's yellow, like the front is yellow, but that's the front of the car. That's where the engine is. Things are not great with the car. It's not moving super fast. I even dropped into a lower gear to get up the hills. Go up the hill, come back down the other side. There's a lot of, there's these barriers up there for, reasons. Get all the way back, find where he is. I missed a turnoff. I didn't see it. I wasn't expecting to look for it. Expected to be able to see him and get to him. So whatever. That's on me. I didn't see it. Rendering is what it is in 1997. So I drive over to where he is. There's a cutscene. And then at the end of the cutscene, it's like, you have 2 minutes to get to Skeeter. And I have to go back up that hill again and around the windy roads. Now
that's not a lot of time.
And there's not a lot of time, and the car is not in great shape. I do it. There's 2 cars chasing me, which is not great because I don't want to turn around and fight them because I know it's going to be tight. And I'm glad, like, well, at least I cleared all these things out in front of me. I won't have them to deal with, which honestly I think is pretty good. Like, okay, I did fight other guys I didn't have to. I get all the way down to the jump that I know because of something that Torres says while he's in the back seat. Like, you just have to jump the bridge to get to whatever the place I'm going. And I said, well, that's going to be a problem because there's like construction stuff, in the road. And I already know, having been here, there is no other side of the bridge. This is under construction. The bridge is out. So I have to jump the bridge and basically into a canyon, which I already saw the cutscene for because I already did this once. And I get there and I'm making the jump and Skeeter dies. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've done all this stuff and now I have to do it all again. And I actually don't think I'd do things differently. I mean, there's places I wouldn't go at all. So there's some combats I would avoid. There's, I guess, maybe three or 4 cars I wouldn't have to destroy, and therefore not take the damage from them. But
so the timer is how long?
The timer is how long you have to get there, and then you don't make it.
Torres dies.
No, Skeeter dies. Skeeter
dies.
Skeeter dies because there are helicopters.
Oh no!
Bombing his van. I'm like, Skeeter, why don't you just drive away? Like, why is this my problem? And the funny thing is, I knew that I had actually discovered the helicopters. So one of the other things about
can you shoot them down?
Well, I don't know. So I'll describe what happened. I was up here in this sort of windy road, and one of the things about the distance culling or the level of detail is like the road is actually like single pieces that cover a fair amount of distance, right? That makes sense because there are not a lot of polys. So the road doesn't LOD out at the same rate the mountains do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a point where I actually am looking out across the road and I can see that there's no ground underneath the road in places because the LODs haven't loaded in yet that have the ground up higher at that spot, which is just a funny, like, okay, you know, they didn't run an LOD system and I can't turn up the value any higher to like render more. I want to like turn the rendering distance out to infinity. There's nothing this game has that I can't render in one go, in one frame. But whatever. So I got to a point where I'd killed a bunch of cars and I was like going along and just hitting the target button as I drove, even though there's like a radar alert when new cars become available. And I happened to target, and off, at what looked like another mountain to me, there were two vehicles I could target between. And I was like, well, those seem like they're not even on the ground. But I'm like, but that's the terrain rendering.
Oh,
but no, it wasn't.
They were so if you can target them, then you can shoot them for sure.
Yeah, but they're very far away. So I mean, I think I targeted it with the target in front of me and just happened to click one. And then I was like going back and forth between. I was like, okay, well they're out there. One is slightly nearer than the other one, but man, it was not going to be.
This sounds like very sim-based mission design as well. Simulate, I mean, even just X-Wing TIE Fighter. Again, I hadn't played the early MechWarrior games, but the later ones, it's like there's points of interest, there's different orders you could do things, you can optimize the missions, conclusion if you do certain like soft sub objectives like the helicopters, probably optional. Yeah, but maybe it gives you more time, or I don't know if it does anything, but
I mean, maybe they just
hypothetically,
right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So that kind of concept where there's because it's usually it's very open terrain based, right? So it's like we're just going to give you points of interest, and going off road in these cars seems untenable, especially if there's mountains. So they do have soft level design gates for you. But it's interesting, yeah. Now I'm kind of worried about the later mission. The later missions might get pretty complex as far as how many points of interest there are, how many things you could optionally do in different orders. And the fact that I'm surprised also at how many steps that mission has, and that there is like such a ramped up conclusion.
Yeah, I was pretty bummed when it failed after 45 minutes, I will say, and and I was like, yep. Got to start at the beginning. And, I had already learned this was already was it my second time doing it? No, it wasn't. This was all in one go. I just had learned as part of doing it, like, oh, I might have quit and come back. That actually might be why. I might have like gotten to a point and been like, I don't think I'm doing the right thing. Oh, I'll go, let me go make myself breakfast and come back or whatever. But so I feel like or maybe I just learned it from an earlier mission, but I was like, oh, okay, when the radar goes, just start targeting and like creep up on enemies so that like I'm far away and actually can shoot them before they know I'm there. And then they start reacting. And by then it's almost too late, so I'm already like cheating the sim a little bit, and I probably wouldn't change how I approach this mission. I just would not let myself get so damaged.
Right.
Some of the damage was like,
is low.
Yeah, exactly. It's very slim. So it's like, well, I want to increase the margin of error, part of which is how fast my car goes. I also wonder if my stick doesn't like go all the way to 1. Like it's an old controller. Who knows what output it's giving, so I've got those problems as well.
That's one advantage I'll have is that it's just all.
Yeah, it's either on or off.
It's just all
binary.
Yeah.
So.
That's yeah. Oh man, I mean, I'm excited to play more, obviously, and I do want to play more, but it does sound a little daunting. So we'll have to see. And I mean, the mission based level flow was the thing. That's we probably had the same experience on TIE Fighter, right?
To some degree.
And it's very If you're fighting any of the controls, this kind of stuff, again, margin of error, like for mission based stuff, sometimes you're 3/4 of the way through and you can't finish. You're like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta But I do love that the car condition is coming into play.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it harder, of course, but I love that that actually is a thing.
Yeah. I do like that it matters. I just, I just hate how it matters, I guess.
Yeah, it would be
You know?
nice to, modern version, you could maybe do repairs on in the field or something.
Yeah, or even just be a little gentler. Like, it's very hardcore. Like, the fact, because I wasn't really that damaged, I think now I'm thinking about it, it's like I think I had a tire that was in the yellow and the other tires were green. So, like, it's probably the tires that are the problem, not the engine. Now that I'm thinking about it,
that's amazing that they simulate all that.
yeah. And so I'm like, okay, so it's probably that. Like, I'm not getting as much traction. Like, I don't think they're directly simulating the traction. They're probably based on the value, like applying a percentage of the force, which again loses you another digit of precision. So another problem. But yeah, so probably that. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking through like where are all the problems coming in with the physics when I talk about it this way. I'm down at 20 frames a second locked, so the physics have been mostly fine. But yeah, the problem is I am just under, I think. Like, I was almost there. I was basically there, and for him to die,
That's even worse.
It's the worst. It was the worst. I mean, there's a point at which you're like, oh my God, I don't know how I'll ever do this. Like, that's a bad place to be. But the second worst place to be is I missed it by like 5-10 seconds, and now I have to play the whole thing over. That's a close second for me. So.
But probably the next time you play it, you'll more breeze through it, I bet.
Oh, I will, yeah, because I'll know exactly what not to do. There's several combats I didn't have to do at all. I probably would. And then the car would be in a better shape. And I am going to actually try it with the flight stick because I'm really curious, because then it actually will mostly free up my left hand. I mean, there's some buttons I probably would want to use on the flight stick I think there's like 6 or 8 buttons on the flight stick that are hard to get to while you're controlling the stick. Like, you won't have to move your hand over, but I might give that a go just to see how it feels. And then I'll have a hat, so I have all kinds of things I can use that are just buttons.
I mean, you have a lot of options at that point.
Yeah. So I'll look for a better configuration because I don't think the way it's playing currently is working well for me. It's close. Like, you can see that it could, in a modern day game, like, they could probably support it if they supported things like the axial inputs, in a proper way.
Yeah, I was close to getting my stick out too at one point. So I for the podcast, I have this silly goal to kind of play it all on keyboard just to see if it, how it holds up in that regard. Because that would have been
have fun
how
with
a lot
that.
of people play it. Yeah, but I'm not. But I'm reconsidering. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I need to play further to make that call, but
yeah.
So I don't. The other missions in between. Is there anything to mention there? Because I haven't played those. That like highlights or anything, or
I mean,
anything memorable.
I do like the evolving kind of story, and there's it's just like this world that they've created. It's very like Escape from New York or something. Of like, like, it's just the Wild West out there. There's just it's just cars driving around with guns on them.
It's late 90s for sure. It is very
late 90s, reflecting on mid 70s. But it definitely is like that kind of vibe of the time. I do like that. There's a lot of kind of I mean, there's some character building between the characters, which I guess I didn't expect, and I'm enjoying. It's not a lot. There's the cutscenes are not very long. I do still love the style. I love listening to a bass. I was reading about the music today. Probably go on about that at another time. They created a band basically with some different. Some of the people in it are people you'd know. Like, the bass player, I think, is the bass player from something blind. 3-Man Blind, is that what it's called?
Third Eye Blind.
Yeah, I stopped listening. So the bassist from that is the bassist playing the music in this game, and then the drummer was somebody from a band that was famous too. I can't remember that one at all. So these are like, but they basically created a band to be the band for this that was called, I think, Bullmark is the name of the band. And then, but the actual individual musicians that were in it were like, oh, is this person? The person on horns is like from some like preservationist jazz band, and like, you know, whatever. I'll have it
Came
out in
up on
front of me.
Discord, right?
I think somebody mentioned that the musicians were. It was probably Fabrican, you know. For
no, it was oh my gosh, because I replied to it.
oh, okay, yeah, I don't remember.
Because they had reached out when the game came out. They had reached out to who was it? Yeah, keep dropping. I'll find
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so it's I will get back to that and look up all the musicians. I mean, some of them were, I mean, I
Oh,
sort
it
of
was. You're right. You're right. It was Muzzballs. Yeah.
so some of them it was like it was Muzzbaz, it was not Fabrican. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was.
He's one of our Aussie listeners.
Arion Salazar is the bass player. Yeah.
Okay.
For the band Bullmark.
Yeah.
But he doesn't mention that it was a created band.
No, I looked that up myself because I was vibing to the
wild.
music. Yeah, they created this band from, you know, it was more than just session musicians. These were musicians who would have been well known in some cases in their own right. I mean,
how did that come to be? I hope we get to talk about that. That's really.
I think
wild.
probably, you know, people who lived around LA, because it's probably
LA,
Orange County. Like,
oh no, definitely, yeah,
studio,
yeah,
right?
Yep, definitely so.
So it probably comes from all of that. But in terms of other stuff that's going on, it's the same stuff. Like, go shoot a few cars here, go do this, shoot a few cars there, blow up a building. You know, it's all pretty much the same stuff. It's not a lot of cars or vehicles that you're ever fighting at once for rendering reasons. I think the cars actually look pretty good. You know, through the front window, you're like, oh yeah, that's a like sort of Pinto or Gremlin looking thing, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of funny. There's one that looks a little bit like like an old fashioned roadster, like from the 30s or something, with a wheel on the side. You know, like, or a Model T or something like that. And then there's one that's kind of like a truck, like a short truck, like not a pickup, but almost like a van, but it's not a van. It's like a bread truck or something like that, but it's not that big. You know, so there are different looks to the different vehicles, which definitely calls to mind other car combat games. You definitely want some variety in the vehicles whenever you're doing something like this.
Yeah.
So Twisted Metal Black, you know, was my favorite in that regard, because you had the ice cream truck, which was the that crazy clown, and then you had the dude whose arms went out to the wheels. I think his name's Axel or something like that, because he's the Axel. And then the preacher is my favorite, and he had like the equivalent of a Brat, you know, which was that sort of car / pickup truck hybrid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where he
like
had
a Baja, Subaru Baja.
Yeah, exactly. That was the modern update. And in the back, he had like, there's just something in a bag and it was wriggling, and then you would like use a catapult in the back of the car to throw this thing out there. That was his special attack. I always like playing the preacher. Repent.
Yeah, we now live in a world where there is a show based on
yes,
that.
Yes, I gather.
Like what has happened?
That is not a thing.
That very popular, well-known game franchise.
Yeah. I mean, it had 4 games in it, I think.
Yeah, I know, but it's just evolved.
It is weird. Properties. Of all the IPs. Yeah. All the IPs and all the world, this one came on the television channel.
Yeah, I will say the you know, again, only playing as far as I have, the moments when I had a couple moments when you're driving down, you're you know, racing down the road chasing an enemy, and they're ahead of you. There's a fantasy fulfillment there that's just, you know, it's just again, Mad Max.
Yeah, very
various touchstones, but it's got that feel, it's got that vibe. It's very effective at that concept, you know, and they're on the radio yelling, and they're trying, of course you can hear their radios for drama's sake, even though you're like, why can I hear them?
No way. Yeah, right.
But of course that's how you need to do that.
Well, you got a CB, that's why.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, so that concept, especially in a desert, you know, it really effective. So it's very impressive in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's when they start turning and you're
feel.
all doing donuts in the middle and you're trying to shoot at each other. And there's like, this is mayhem. But
yeah, this is mayhem and like flight sim at the same time. It's like, how do I change my turn radius so I can get inside his turn radius to shoot him? Because that's basically, and you have to lead them, as well, because of course it's a sim, right? Even though you have the target on the thing, that doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't have any assisted targeting of like the box is red, so you'll hit him now if you shoot, which is something we did and TIE Fighter did as well. Where they would change the pip color based on based on accuracy. I'll hit or not if I shoot now, and most shooters do as well in like the first person arena or even third person. So yeah, I guess next time we will try to get you further in. We'll online do some tech support and figure out what's going on there. It might just be your laptop.
I'm going to try on the desktop
graphics card,
as a because that laptop has had other issues with old games we've played. Yeah, we'll see. We'll figure it out. Now I'm considering getting a wheel. just to experience it.
Wow.
Driving in the open
Jen will be
road
thrilled.
of the desert. Yeah, and then I'll just put that in the closet.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Touch it again.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Well, I have a bit of a production note before we go, and that is we are now, as a podcast, available, or should be by the time you're hearing this, on YouTube. I gather Google Podcast shut down a while ago. I know they sent us some email, which I mostly ignored, and a couple of people asked about it, and I finally took the steps to incorporate. We have a Dev Game Club Gmail account, and therefore we have a Dev Game Club YouTube channel automatically. Right. So I went and set that up. I had to send a film of myself to Google, so that was fun. Thanks, Google, to validate that I am the owner? ? They approved it in less than a minute, so I don't really know what the heck.
AI.
Yeah, they were just training their face model, I'm sure.
Yep, they gotcha.
Well, I did it for the listeners, so congrats, listeners. If you want to use YouTube, that should be published. I made it public. It just said this is going to take a little while, so I presume that'll be done by 3 days from now. In the meantime, I've already started getting emails of comments, which I assume are from bots that are trying to sell me crypto. So I do it for you, folks. I do it for you. Don't expect me to respond to any stuff on the YouTube channel for comments, because I think I'm going to turn them off on all of them, because I do not want to deal.
We have a Discord for that.
We have a Discord for that.
Come to the Discord if you really want to say something.
Yes, and there will be a link as we go to the outro in the show notes for that. We also love to get your reviews, and of course you can send email, as I mentioned already, to devgameclub@gmail.com. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, and my friend here, not this week, but hopefully back soon, Twitch is at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
I saw you delved into the realms.
We did, yeah.
I popped in and I was seeing a carrot mine, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to close this and I'm going to watch a movie instead.
I'm calling him Triple L now, Legendary Lost Lake.
Wow.
He came in. Well, I had ended, if anyone seeks out the VOD, which is only up for 14 days or whatever, but I had ended in a very bad place, and he had basically built up protection around me. And I had a bed down in the middle of this deep, deep, dark cavern. And so the first was a rescue mission where he came, and it's like he's guiding a toddler, right? I mean, like, basically, because I haven't played in a while and I have to relearn everything, and I'm like, and I've never been great at it, and then you have this basically God show up with unlimited everything, and he's like, how come you can't get up this waterfall? What are you doing?
Yeah,
I think that's what he's saying in his head. Lost Lake's very nice, very kind and patient, but then carrot farm, an iron farm, which involves a one room and like 10 villagers all living in this one room. It looks very suspicious. And then apparently iron golems spawn because of that, and you kill them and get the iron in an automated way. It's just Minecraft. It's so amazing and weird.
Yep.
But we're going to do more. We're going to have some dungeon crawls that he wants to do, and maybe go fight the dragon, and we're going to keep it on.
Well, you have fun with that. There's announcements that happen in the Discord as well, for both community streams and for Tim and I streaming. Not that I have for like a year. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, the Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun staying real cool this week, and good night.
Good night.